Your savior is here!
He's back! The boy with the big horns, Tumblr's problematic Norse crush, the god of Mischief, is now starring in his own Disney Plus streaming show, and he is burdened with, well, kind of a lack of glorious purpose. We're digging the retro, futuristic trappings and temporal shenanigans of Loki, but of course, us being us, we're wondering what's in store. Comic fans will know that Loki has many abilities that haven't appeared in the MCU so far, and with multiple Loki set to appear in the show, what new powers might we see? Time to get speculating. Possession is a big thing with Loki in the comics, but it's not really something we've seen him do in the movies.
This usually works.
Of course, he took control of Hawkeye, Selvig, and those other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in the Avengers, but it was the scepter that allowed him to do that. In the comics, however, Loki can use his magic to take control of people's minds and bodies and turn them to nefarious ends. For example, he once took control of Lady Sif in order to try to take over Asgard. Classic Loki. Perhaps the Loki who has been captured by the Time Variance Authority will discover this ability, or maybe we'll see evil Loki use it. Either way, we'd put even odds on it showing up in some form or another. Perhaps ironically for a character who spends 90% of their time lying.
I've studied almost every moment of your entire life. You've literally stabbed people in the back like 50 times.
Comics Loki has frequently wielded a weapon called Graham, also known as the Truth Sword. This mystical blade has some very interesting features, including it can cut through telepathic control, freeing hypnotized people from corruption. It can also slice through lies, revealing the truth beneath. Something for evil Loki to wield, perhaps? Or might our Loki find it in his travels?
Enhanced 224 to 176.
Either way, for a show that seems to be focusing on the lies we tell ourselves to justify our actions, it would be a pretty appropriate accessory. Can MCU Loki fly? It's ambiguous. If he can, he certainly doesn't do it very often. But in the comics, Loki's magic grants him various degrees of levitation. He doesn't even need a hammer like his brother. He can just lift himself up into the air and whoosh. At this point in the Loki show, he hasn't been able to access his magic, but once he has access to his powers again, we would guess he's going to be taking advantage of them as much as he can, and maybe even trying out some new stuff. Flight would seem a pretty obvious choice, especially if we're going to be getting some big magical battles. Those fights always look better when they're airborne. That's just science. Again, this power has been slightly fudged around in the MCU, but in the comics, Loki has the ability to teleport to various distances. It depends who's writing the story, but he has been known to teleport an extremely long way, sometimes even between realms. That might be a bit too overpowered for the show, but evil Loki does seem to be doing a lot of traveling around, causing mayhem all over the universe. So it stands to reason that they have some kind of teleportation ability. And we imagine anti-hero Loki would like to get his hands on that power if he could. This next power is an interesting one and could make for some fun shenanigans in the show. Comics Loki sometimes has the ability to transfer his powers to others for a limited time. He can also boost the innate abilities of his allies and even permanently grant superhuman powers. He also created Absorbing Man, which admittedly wasn't one of his best schemes. You can imagine how this ability could translate to some exciting TV drama. Perhaps evil Loki has the ability to create superpowered lackeys to defend him. Perhaps our Loki can temporarily give Agent Mobius some extra juice when they go into battle together, or even some new skills. We're gonna be kinda disappointed now if none of that happens. We've seen Loki humiliated and laid low by the superior might of the Time Variance Authority.
TVA is formidable.
So you can bet the god of Mischief is going to want to reassert himself as soon as he's got that collar off. One way of doing that could be to dig up his old immunity powers. Comics Loki is effectively immune to any kind of telepathic or hypnotic magical control. If evil Loki has been going around possessing people, it makes sense that they might try to do the same to TVA Loki. And we can imagine some classic God of Mischief double-crossing antics if that does happen. Telekinesis. Everybody loves telekinesis. We have seen some in the movies, with Loki throwing knives in combat and furniture in moments of rage. But for such a dramatic and visually interesting power, its on-screen uses have been surprisingly sparing. We would put good money on telekinesis rearing its head over the course of the show, either from evil Loki or some other variant, or from the main protagonist as he rediscovers his glorious purpose. Cause, like we said, who doesn't love telekinesis? This last power is a real long shot, and not least because there is no confirmation that we'll see a Thor cameo. But in the comics, due to some mystical good and evil reversing nonsense, Loki has on occasion been deemed worthy to lift Thor's hammer. If the writers do decide to include this, we wouldn't expect it to be a major plot point.
I'm giving the people what they want.
But it's a fun Elseworlds what-if kind of scenario, and in a show that's focused on alternate timelines and dimensions, maybe we'll get a glimpse of a world where the god of mischief has taken his big brother's favorite toy. Stop! Hammer time. Sorry. This is very unlikely to feature in the show, but did you know that Loki was once the Sorcerer Supreme? That's right, in one comic run, Loki got Doctor Strange's job, and Strange ended up powerless and working as a veterinarian. That's something we kind of want to see now.
Look, this has been a very enjoyable pantomime, but I'd like to go home now.